Hi, good morning. I'm Keith Fiveson with the Center for Wellbeing and Work Mindfulness. And here we are again for Yen at 10, Your Environment Now, with Dr. Hildur Palsdottir, and a wonderful guest today, really to go ahead and talk about the environment and talk about what we can do to make a better world. Dr. Hildur, what do you have to say for yourself this morning?
Good morning.
Good morning.
Well, first of all, I've always found it striking, and perhaps the right word is delusional, to burn through fossil forests in a split second every time we start the car. When I talk with kids in school settings, that connection seems pretty clear, that, million-year-old plant material, to burn through that in a couple of seconds just doesn't make much sense. As we get older, corporate interest kicks in. Special concerns, and this direct connection is lost somehow. It seems obvious to anyone who gives it one thought that perhaps harnessing the sun like plants do and drive life on Earth is the most logical way to go. So why is it taking so long? The most heartbreaking moment to me in American history was when Al Gore did not become president. That was a turning point, and I think it defines us today. And we see the direct consequence of that particular moment in time. Now, as I speak with young adults or children, the connection between petroleum and plastic seems very clear. And we know now that over 90% of seabirds have their insides are filled with plastics. Mm-hmm. We have lots of data on trillion pieces of plastic in the ocean, but the somewhere along the way, this information gets lost. And therefore, I'm pleased to introduce a very special guest today. I heard her in a webinar as one of the speakers on plastic pollution, and she made a very clear and striking connection in terms of our legal responsibilities, just making it, as much as America is supposedly the land of the free, people don't seem to behave until it's law. I liked what she said, and I made connection to her. And the more I researched her work, the more I wanted to get to know her better and support her work, because she is a wildlife rehabilitator. She is an artist and a writer, and she moves between those. I saw one of your Instagram posts said that when you have writer's block, you take to drawing. And what's exciting is she sails the world seas and samples plastic along the way, works with scientists. So she really is a cultural activist who brings the science into your view here, wherever we are in the comfort of our home, and we need to see it to believe it. And she's now writing a book that I'd like to share where she's at in that, Poisonous Seas. Scientists have been going on and on for decades about acidification of the oceans, and that seems to fall on deaf ears, and that is the most significant problem we have on Earth if we want to keep on breathing. So welcome, Erica. I'm excited in many ways to introduce you and give you the word.
And
it's my pleasure.
Erica, maybe you can give us your full name and maybe what you're up to, maybe the name of your book, and a little bit about your background before we get going.
Sure. So my name is Erica. My last name is Serino if you're Americanizing it, but Chirino with little hand movement if you're being Italian. I grew up on Long Island. After college, in college I studied environmental science and also focused on environmental literature. Got a science journalism degree from Stony Brook, and then immediately said, I need to get the hell out of here off of Long Island. And I just started doing freelance journalism all over the world. My first expedition really was in the middle of Gila National Forest in New Mexico. I was looking for endangered Mexican gray wolves with a complete stranger who happened to be a fantastic guide. Wrote stories about that, took photos, and then went and saw endangered killer whales in the Salish Sea, the extremely critically endangered southern resident killer whales, which are dying due to a whole host of issues, mainly a lack of salmon because of our use of dams in the Pacific Northwest. And then after that, I went sailing across the Pacific Ocean from LA to Hawaii, documenting plastic pollution with a Danish nonprofit called Plastic Change. And I was on the boat as a photojournalist. I wrote dozens of stories about that, and the topic of plastic has brought me again sailing all over the world, from the Pacific to the Atlantic, the waters off Iceland, off Denmark, and right now I'm in Denmark just because my Danish crew, they really became family to me. So I found a way to do some research here. And I'm now writing a book called Poisonous Seas. That's the tentative title. Again, just kind of exploring this issue of plastic pollution. How did we get here? What is it doing in the environment? Because we know it's a problem now. So, I mean, we have to figure out how to address the problem. But to know how to move forward, we have to actually understand how we got here. Because how can we undo what we've done, or at least, you know, try to remediate things a little bit if we don't understand where we've been. So basically, you know, since I was 24, those years have just been one very long adventure. I'm now 28, but that just feels like a long time. I've seen a lot of very sad things, but I've seen also a lot of very beautiful things, and have met people who really care. I always have had a bit of more affinity for non-human nature than human nature, just because of my experiences with certain people. So to me, it's been also a really great learning experience, and trusting and seeing the beauty of people all over the world, in addition to the nature. So
let me say, Erica, thank you very much for joining us, really from Denmark this morning.
Yeah.
And where are you, in Copenhagen, you said?
Copenhagen.
Oh,
Yeah.
how wonderful. I think one of the things that I'm struck by is not only your energy, but your enthusiasm for really going into this and looking at it with a passion. I'm wondering personally what you think the problems are and how we can, you know, fix them. And that's a long question, or rather a long answer to a very short question. So,
Right.
but I'm very interested in your perspective of where you think we're going, and how we can maybe look at solving some of the problems. I'm sure you've had a lot of conversations around this.
Right. So people ask me all the time, you know, how are we going to solve these issues? And I really think it comes down to quite a simple answer, which is a shift in our values. I mean, we are valuing all the wrong things, and that's leading to cataclysmic issues such as climate change and plastic pollution. I mean, it can really all be boiled down to that issue that our values are misaligned with the continuation of life on Earth. I mean, humans are the only species acting in discordance with actually perpetuating living beings from thriving on the planet. I mean, we're doing everything possible to kill ourselves and all other creatures. So I think recognizing that and kind of taking a step back and saying, okay, we're focusing on, that's my dog chewing a toy next to me. We're focusing on wealth, like material wealth. We're focusing on power. We're focusing on a lot of issues, self-image, that really aren't very useful or valuable. Of course, they're part of the human culture, but I think in a lot of ways we're learning now, especially with these racial issues coming to the fore, issues of inequality, of course, climate change and disease. You know, our lives are not equal by any means, and part of that is because we've chosen to value the wrong things. So this also goes in tune with nature. I mean, we just don't value nature the way we should. So that's my shortened answer to the big question.
And I believe you have some photos from your travels to share with us, right?
I have many photos, so I'm going to open up kind of nice exemplary images. So I'll take one from the South Pacific, one of Hawaii, a few from Iceland. Go. And this one. So again, I've been sailing quite a lot. I really realized it was out there that I could recognize this need for a value shift, because at sea, you really have only what you've brought on the boat and your own human ingenuity and those around you. So trust is a huge thing. Being able to think on your feet, it's very important. Here we go. Oops. this one.
David, Kim, would you please mute, because we need to see Erica throughout the presentation.
So I'm going to do the screen share, which is here. Oh, host oh, here we go. Let me see. Can you see anything? It says host disabled attendee screen sharing.
Oh,
I'm not sure.
yeah, I'll make you co-host.
Make her co-host, yes. Okay, good. Okay.
Do you have to do that, David? Keith?
Let's see. Yep, we got it. Cool. I'm going to open up the photos. Here we go. And okay, so this is me at the helm of the first ship I sailed on in the North Pacific. So I crossed what you might have heard before, the famous Great Pacific Garbage Patch. So this notorious accumulation of plastic debris kind of swirling in a cyclone of water between the coast of California and the shores of Hawaii, and actually extends all the way to towards Japan. So this is the trip that changed everything. I think this captured my love of sailing, brought my attention to the need for a value shift. I mean, on this trip, we had one bucket to serve as a toilet between 9 people. We didn't have any shower. We just had salt water to kind of bathe and do our hair with. And, you know, just the food on board. I mean, there's no Starbucks, there's no Wi-Fi, there's nothing, no creature comforts out at sea. And yet it was the richest experience I've ever had in my life. So it was really quite fantastic. Unfortunately, when we reached the shores of Hawaii, so again, we sailed from LA to Hawaii, it took 24 days. Along the way, we found a lot of plastic, but also on the shores of Hawaii were a lot of plastic. I visited Camilo Beach, and it's the most notoriously polluted beach in the United States. This little circular thing you see in the forefront, kind of the middle ground of the picture, is a plastic microbead. So maybe you've heard about microbeads being banned in the US from facial cleansers and other beauty products. That's because they're kind of a ready-made source of what we call microplastic pollution. So these tiny bits of plastic that every plastic item is going to eventually break up into, because plastic never ever biodegrades. It just gets into smaller and smaller pieces. And that's a problem because, as Hildur said, you know, wildlife like seabirds are eating plastic, and they're suffering huge consequences of that, physically and the chemical consequences of the toxins in the plastic. But before I depress you further, I'll share some kind of beauty of the sea. So this is a black-footed albatross cruising over a wave in the Pacific. So while we did see a lot of plastic, we also saw a lot of wildlife, but that's kind of, you know, further this emphasis, sorry about the dog, this emphasis on the fact that we really need to look at the life around us and not just ourselves, and think, why do we need to change? And it's, you know, to help all other species as well. Here is a red-footed booby and a rainbow. Approaching Hawaii, you can kind of see the very subtle outline of land in the distance. I'm just gonna cruise through some other nice shots. This is just a typical day at sea. So, you know, it's the best office you could ask for. It's really quite miraculous. Okay, so now I'm going to take you back to Camilo Beach. So when I talk about plastic pollution, this beach just captures the whole picture. So anything that's floating in the sea or suspended in the water column, it can either stay in the water and just break up into little pieces, or it could be brought to shore by the action of waves. So beaches, while cleanups are not the answer to the problem, looking at beach plastic can actually be a very helpful barometer of what's going on in the water itself. So the scientists I was with actually were keeping track of what plastics we were finding on the beach, and believe it or not, 80% of what we found were items used on land. So obviously, what we're doing on land is hurting the oceans. Plastic finds its way into the sea because of animals carrying it there, because of people who litter, and just simply wind and rain and other things are washing these items into the ocean. Only 20% of what we found was fishing gear. So that just tells you something too, that we really need to change our lifestyle and shift our values, because you could you could put together everything you need for a day in your life by picking this plastic stuff off the beach. You'll find toothbrushes, combs, flip-flops, containers, like anything you want. And now I want to bring you to a more remote place. This is off the waters of northern Iceland. I went sailing on a bit more of an advanced ship, and that little animal in the distance is a sperm whale. So on this trip, we actually discovered that a lot of the little plastic bits, the microplastic, were accumulating in the same places where whales were feeding. Hugely problematic issue. But then you think about it, okay, these little bits of plastic look like food, like plankton or krill to a lot of animals. And this is going to be causing huge effects up the food chain. So again, if there's toxins in the plastic, if the plastics are blocking animal systems, you know, all of our bodies actually currently contain phthalates, which is a chemical only found in plastic. I don't know if you knew that fact or not, but plastic is touching us all, and so there's no doubt that it's harmful. One more scene from Iceland. So again, the simple life at sea, everyone is pitching in. You know, you cannot be selfish on a boat. If you are, everyone's going to want to throw you overboard. So I think that's a really quick way to learn how to align your values with a functional society or a functional ecosystem. I mean, the ship itself is its own ecosystem. Speaking of ecosystems, plastic itself can be a carrier for invasive wildlife. So this was from the Pacific, and we found this bit of foam that was just covered with these invasive barnacles from Asia. So kind of miraculously, we're also finding that plastic is causing a whole host of other ecological issues other than just harming the wildlife that eats it. So we could actually introduce species that take over and change whole ecosystems at the expense of native wildlife, just because we're throwing plastic into the sea. This is a great illustration of how plastic breaks up into little pieces but never breaks down. This is some kind of biological matter, like some kind of dead thing on the top. But anyway, below where the white and the green piece you can see, and also that black piece there, these are pieces of microplastic. So this is a very fine mesh net, and we kind of just place the plastic inside and then kind of rinsed it off with some water. These pieces of plastic belong to maybe a styrofoam cup, some kind of child's toy, a flip-flop, whatever. Any plastic item, it will just continuously get smaller and smaller, but never go away. So these problems arise, especially when you're looking at very tiny pieces of plastic, which actually are capable of going from your bloodstream into your internal organs, like your brain. And scientists are finding that fish that this happens to have huge behavioral problems that actually impair their ability to hunt. So, you know, plastic could actually be giving us mental illnesses or aberrant behavior that is not helping us stay alive. It's very scary, and the problem will only get worse and worse. So we really need to stop using plastic now. And as Hildur mentioned, and I'm sure we'll get into this a bit more, but you know, plastic is made from fossil fuels, and climate change and plastic production go hand in hand. You know, you just want to think, well, or oil companies want you to think, oh, you know, we're going green by producing green energy, and we're you know, selling less oil and gas. Well, it's not really true. They're selling oil and gas so that plastic can be made, not put in cars for gasoline. But it's just as bad, if not worse, in some ways. So one last photo. I don't know if you can see this. Oh, screen sharing has stopped. It wasn't that important anyway, but I hope I covered everything.
It's a very big problem that's very systemic, and there are what you pointed out here is fascinating, especially when I think of it in terms of you know, the areas of compassion and the values that we have, and how it used to be. There's a singer back in the 60s and 70s called Frank Zappa.
I love Frank Zappa.
Yeah, and he had plastic people. That was his term. Yeah. And you know, it's basically a society driven on consumerism. And there are some organizations. Apparently, the plastic industry is starting to clean, or trying, or at least their campaign is to clean things up. And
Right.
I'm wondering what your sense of that is and whether or not you think that's effective and, what you think we can do to go ahead and obviously promote the cause and further the cause that you're so passionate about.
Right. Well, I want to be clear that there is absolutely no way to clean up all the plastic that we've littered into the environment. I mean, there's probably now close to 100 trillion pieces of microplastic out there in the world. If in the air, it comes down in the rain, it's in the atmosphere, in the water, in the soil. We are completely surrounded. Actually, there was a Danish study I covered last year that said every hour, if you're inside your house or your apartment, you're breathing in at least 11 particles of microplastic each hour. And Danish apartments are notoriously spare looking, so we don't have a lot of carpets or furniture, and I imagine that other indoor environments have a lot more synthetics. But anyway, cleaning it up is definitely not the answer. The answer is just to stop using plastic.
Yes. I wanted to add to that. Is it true that microfibers from our polyester clothing, that's also related to the fossil fuel industry, but is it true that that's a great majority of what we find on the beach are these microfibers from when we wash our clothing? So something everyone on the call today could do is get a filter. Right. Would you like to speak to that? Like in terms of like problem solutions, like something
Sure.
we could just do today is insert that filter, right?
Right, there's filters, but also a kind of like a ball that you can put in your washing machine too that tries to capture any of these little fibers, because if you're wearing synthetic clothing, the plastic fibers will shed off in water, especially in warm water, because they kind of separate. So there's a special filter you can get. I don't know the name of it off the top of my head, but I have, I can find it for you, or I'm sure Hildur, you're probably looking it up right now.
Yeah.
But that's a very actionable step you can take. I mean, if you have polyester-based clothing or other synthetics like nylon, I mean, you shouldn't just throw it out, because obviously then the plastic is still going to get into the environment. So I would say keep the clothing that you have, but maybe going forward, be more conscious to get secondhand natural fiber clothing like wool or cotton. It's a great way to kind of reduce waste and also, give other items a second life. And while not causing more plastic pollution, that's really helpful. But I mean, addressing this issue again, I mean, we talk about replacements too, right? So if we have bioplastic, is that better? Or if we have clothing made of these biomaterials, is that better? Can I still go to the store and get something if it's in a bio bag? And it's like, why can't we just use biodegradable materials that are naturally biodegradable, such as, wood, paper, ceramic, glass. I mean, we have so many options out there. Even steel. I mean, I have a stainless steel water bottle I've had for 15 years, and I've never used a plastic bottle since I bought that thing. It's really easy to make a change, but it requires our value shifting and us slowing down and being intentional about making the change. Because any item that we can throw away, if we can still get it, whether or not it biodegrades, we're going to think of things as disposable, which is a huge problem in our society. So the less we can think of it as disposable, and the more we can say, okay, I'm going to always use this steel water bottle. I'm always going to use my metal forks and knives at a dinner party. Just being really intentional about it, that I think can make the biggest change that kind of reverberates throughout society.
Yes, and exactly, like a very simple change we did was move over to paper packaged shampoo and just the regular old hand soap.
Exactly.
I was personally appalled when I saw everybody go out and buy Perel, and when it's scientifically proven that the best defense is just regular old soap and water with a virus like coronavirus. Exactly. So having these hand soap, I really like. There's plastic in our everyday use that really doesn't need to be there.
Right. Exactly. Or even I see like so many masks on the ground. And we know now that actually anything that's made of plastic holds coronavirus longer than things that are made of cotton cloth. Exactly. Perfect. Oh, so beautiful with the zebras. I love it. Amazing.
Yes, they did something in our town here. They brought back the bag. We had banned the bag, but then they brought it back because of the coronavirus. So that's where, the confusion
Counterintuitive.
starts.
Yeah.
Yes.
But again, who is pushing for those bags to be used again? Of course, the plastic industry says, oh no, coronavirus, we need to produce a lot of bags and tell everyone, oh, you can throw this away, so the virus is being put in the trash. Not the case at all.
Yes.
So yeah, don't listen to the lies.
Yes, what I learned in the webinar where you were one of the panelists was that it's called lint lover. Lint, L-U-V-R. Of course, it's best to just buy cotton clothing or something that's sustainable. But if you have polyester and you don't want to get rid of it, you don't want to not use your polyester or fleece, then you can get this lint lover. It seems to be 87% effective in catching your microfibers.
And tens of thousands of microfibers can come off of one fleece jacket in one wash. So even getting 87% is quite an improvement, I would say.
Yes, and I think I read that you can actually detect microplastics in breast milk.
Yeah. Wow.
And in all of our bodily fluids soon, most of seabirds. And when I first, I wanted to show my children the largest mammal on earth. And we were north of Iceland. That's where my mother's family comes from. As we made contact, a plastic bag floated by, just sort of striking personal memory, and it's really significant in so many ways, because plastic, it's tied into it. There are carcinogens, and also with fertility, infertility problems associated with some of those compounds that are used in this manufacture. So there are just so many problems. It really needs to be banned.
So there is a question, Hildur. What about the disposable masks that everyone's wearing? Are they dangerous to be using? And are we inhaling more microplastic fibers? Any thoughts about that, perhaps, Erica?
That's a great question. I would say that we really should be saving any kind of disposable surgical masks for frontline medical workers who, have to quickly, switch between patients. We don't need to do that, because we can, we have the time to wash our cloth masks or have several masks that we can rotate. I don't know how harmful it is. I'm sure that you are breathing in some amount of microplastic if you're using a mask that's made with some plastic on it. And then they're not made of cotton, these masks that you're probably talking about that you throw away. So I would say just be more mindful, and if you're able to get a cloth mask, I would do that. I don't think it will kill you to use it, but again, best for the medical workers and probably not best for us.
And I have a somewhat related but unrelated question, if you will. I heard that you were on the boat for quite some time, for 10 months, was it? 10 or 12 months?
Sabi, no? 1 second. Hey. Our neighbor came home. Sabi, hey, honey, come here. It's okay. New puppies.
I love it.
Yeah. Look. Hello.
Oh,
hello.
beautiful dog.
Thank you. Come on. Yeah, on the couch. She was abused as a puppy by her former owner, so she has a little bit of, work to do, but she's getting there. A little
traumatized,
yeah. It's gonna get her.
So you were on the boat for quite some time, in any event. And I guess my question is looking at COVID and what we're doing in terms of lockdown and all that, I want to draw a little bit of a relationship here in terms of, I really believe we're kind of in a shift. I'd like to think it would be the end of consumerism as we know it.
Right.
And that people are, looking much more in terms of sustainability for, how do I use how do I build my garden? How do I go ahead and tend to things that I
Right.
need to? And the issues are really, really big. I'm just wondering your thoughts around this. Do you see this shift as well? Do you feel that there is a shift?
I totally do, and I feel like what I'm seeing right now is actually people are making those changes, and I think it's amazing. I'm just afraid that once life returns to normal and we're able to kind of leave our homes, and I mean, at least here in Denmark, things are very, very open. I mean, schools have been open for quite some time, at least a few months. Restaurants and bars are opening up. I haven't gone out, for a drink or anything because I don't think it's responsible personally. But others seem to think otherwise. And I have friends who are just very jazzed to get out. But I do think if we really do listen to this time and take a moment to kind of reflect, we will start making changes, however subtle, towards a more sustainable future, and just maybe even realize that we're very able to do things for ourselves that we've been calling on others or plastic to do for us. So right. I really do hope it does, shift very soon.
Good. I know John Halpern has a question. John, feel free to ask the question if you like. John, are you still there? I'm unmuting you, John. I'm trying to. Go ahead.
Okay. Hey, Erica, how you doing?
Hi. Good, thanks.
All right. Late afternoon over there, right?
Yeah, about almost 5.
Yeah. Do you have any kind of a database or a website where we can access your work and some of this more technical, sort of guiding information for how to live more plastic free? That's one question.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, Hildur just shared my website, which was great. Thank you so much. There's a plastic page, and I actually will have a guide coming up on how to live more of a zero waste life coming soon. But there you can find all my plastic stories, a video of what it's like to be in the garbage patch, and other photos and interviews and such.
Erica Sarino.
Torino.
Sarino.
Yeah.
And then, many years ago, I started a project called New Consume. And the idea was to transform existing consumer products in a way that would sort of contagiously transmit a new idea about being a consumer.
Right.
And one of those was like this shake up thing, which if you shake it up, it's black.
Oh no.
So
yeah.
I transformed thousands of those in Europe.
Wow.
But I'm just curious from the perspective of what I've been calling cultural activism. Is there some form, or have you seen products and expression that include, this new value system in, let's say, a new form of media, or a new product, a new art object that inspires people to transform their image of themselves with a wider we are one sort of experience or context?
Right. I can't point to any one brand doing that, but here in Copenhagen, I've joined kind of a collection of artists. We call ourselves the Institute for Creative Maladjustment, because we are maladjusted to living in the society the way that it is. So we kind of come together and we just talk about everything. I mean, how do we feel in this time? What are we trying to do? It's not really a space. It is a space for future collaboration, and we have had great projects be born of it. But the focus at the group meetings is just, what is going on at this moment? How do we feel about it? And kind of just reflecting on how things could shift in kind of a new way forward. So that's been very exciting. But I think community is really where it's at. I mean, that's why this group is so exciting, because we need to have this happening all over.
Yes.
I mean,
exactly. And it's one of the more inspirational teachers in my life is Joanna Macy with the work that reconnects. Right. And it's really important to really address the fact that it isn't possible to feel healthy in a sick society. it isn't a sustainable world we're in. And if you know it, if you happen to be one of the members of this species aware of the possibility of your own extinction, that's a tough, bite to chew on.
Yeah.
So on that note, I think when we get together with like-minded, we feel that sort of connectivity and not as diseased by, belonging. And I see Eric Powers has his hand up. So please join the conversation, Eric, because we've had this conversation about population control.
Well, hey, Erica. I'm
Hi.
Eric, and I love all the work you do. Thank you.
Thank you.
And, I've settled into environmental education as my way of activating change around the world. And I love it. I love what I do. And and it looks like you do too.
Yeah, great.
So I appreciate that. But this year, I really appreciate your thought on the change of our values. A shift in our values needs to occur. And that's exactly my message this year as well. So I think it's kind of cool.
Amazing.
That we're both saying the same thing. But I just did, I'm here at SEED, and we just did our virtual celebration of the summer solstice. And we always honor our natives for the summer solstice. And this year, we also included our native peoples.
Amazing.
And then I just taught a course at Malloy College for these, it's a graduate level college course for high school teachers. So they're teaching the kids that are just making these final decisions before they become adults. So I feel like that's a real prime time to hit these kids with this message. And that's what we talked about was shifting our value to honoring our natives. And we should be planting our lawns with native plants.
Exactly.
And that's going to help attract native wildlife, because we've got to start supporting our native wildlife. Everything is in decline. And we got to keep our cats indoors so that the cats are just hammering wildlife across the world right now. But also honoring or valuing is the right word. I like your word. I'm going to switch my word to value. But we need to start valuing our indigenous peoples, because they have been living sustainably on planet Earth for thousands of years. Right. And we need to learn lessons from them on how to move our society back into sustainability. And it was wonderful to hear from I got some Native American Indians on our Zoom calls and stuff, and to hear from them.
Where were they from? Which area? Or which tribe?
We had a Taino Indian.
Wow, cool.
We had an Unkachug Indian and a Shinnecock.
Amazing.
So, and it's just, and I want to start bringing these people forward and put them in front of other people's faces so they can start interacting and having conversations and sharing. And I think that's so important. So I just wanted to say, keep up the good fight. And,
thank you so much. And you too. It's amazing what you're doing.
Yeah, thank you.
I was wondering if Eric would share with us the recording from that solstice celebration. I missed it. I was in transit.
And I'm aware of timing as well, Hildur. So we've got a couple of minutes. I'm just wondering, Erica, you've been really wonderful. And again, thank you so much for joining all of this from Copenhagen. And, we really are a collaborative community. So any ideas you have in terms of helping us to spread the word and bring people together to go ahead and be a force for action? John's on, he's doing the work around cultural activism. Hildur has been doing this work ongoing, and we'd like to go ahead and bring change into the world. So maybe this is kind of a think tank discussion that we need to have a little later in terms of how we can be more of a force rather than a discussion forum,
Well, force always starts with discussion, and I think the best ideas are well thought out and carefully kind of growing from just smattering of all different ideas in one place. And so you start following the channels and the paths that lead out to action. So
I like that.
Yeah,
I like that. John, you had a comment as well before we close.
Erica and of course everybody, but particularly Erica, our Institute for Cultural Activism is designated. It's a sort of, designed and dedicated to connecting cultural activists around the world to work together. And we just launched our website. I put the website up there.
Fantastic.
But if you would like to explore with us how you can use our platform as a way to broadcast and connect with other cultural activists around the world, that I think could be a very exhilarating and productive, experience for everybody.
Yeah,
And
thank you.
We can talk about this later.
Excellent.
Exactly. And here locally, I want to, Claire, can you unmute yourself? We are a collective here locally in Port Washington. We call ourselves Transition Town Port Washington, tapping into a global network of transition towners and working with Rewild Long Island. We have several initiatives where we're sort of shifting the consciousness. First, we're changing the lawn into habitats, just changing the view of what suburbia should look like. We're starting a community compost pilot and other things. And Claire has a project that she wanted to just bring to the table today.
Yeah, so I'm part of rewilding my yard, and have ordered a whole bunch of plastic potted plants from actually native growers on Long Island, and have been keeping them because I'm wondering what to do with them. Because I know that the town of North Hempstead, even if you put it in your recycle bin, they do not get recycled. And we all know that recycling doesn't mean what we think it means anyway. So anyway, I just said, well, gosh, what if we could, collect these pots back and send them back to the growers so they don't have to buy more plastic. So that it was just a quick idea. Raju made a phone call to the grower, and would they accept these pots back? So we started the big plastic pot reuse at the Rewild, I guess it's the Rewild Garden at Dodge House in Port Washington. And we've set up bins, and I have some signage there. And on Tuesdays and Thursdays, people can drop off their plastic pots and trays, very cleanly washed of the dirt, and we will return them to the growers. Now, we all know we would love this to be a town initiative, that it should be something that our government should be doing, but they're just so not even close to being able to wrap their arms around something like this. And so we're starting this way, and I'm working with the kids, and hopefully we'll actually collect data for the month of July, and how many pots we collected, what the weight of the pots we collected, and be able to show something, and then hopefully either do this on some sort of ongoing or regular basis, or during planting season or something.
Yes, yeah, and you brought up a great point. Let's talk about it. I know Keith has a hard stop, so he's going to say goodbye, and then we can continue the conversation. But Claire, you make an important point. You wish the town was doing it. We need to put political pressure because we are the voters. So we are now growing in numbers. We have hundreds of people, and it is said that you only need 3%. There used to be a time everyone was smoking on the planes, and that's not happening anymore. So I'm hoping plastic goes the same way.
No, and we are experiencing a shift. And unfortunately, I do have to drop. I have a hard stop I have to jump onto, but we are in overtime here. So I do want to just make sure that people are, again, able to get a hold of folks. And I think, that said, Erica, what website can they visit you at again, please?
Sure, it's just ericaserino.com.
Ericaserino.com. Okay,
yeah.
Great.
And I think Hildur shared it.
And then we also have John Halpern. What was your website, John, please? It's instituteforculturalactivism.org. Yeah? Got it. Okay. And Hildur, your website one last time, please.
rewildlongisland.org, and Eric Powers is at seed, CEEDLI.org.
Great, great. So, and I'd like to thank everyone. This video will be posted on YouTube on behalf of the Center for Wellbeing, and I'm Keith Fiveson with the Work Mindfulness Project, and we're going to end now, but we look forward to next week for another exciting show with Your Environment Now at 10, or Yen at 10. And thank you so much, Hildur. It's such a pleasure to be with you and everyone else here. So we thank you.
Thank you for hosting us.
All right.